Okay, hey everyone. So this is just the lesson that we did last class. I figured I would reteach it just so you guys could have, a video to refer back to, and also just in case any of you are absent. This is how I am planning on doing the rest of my lessons. So let me know what you think, and we'll go from here. So if you remember, we started learning about quadrilaterals last time. And so if you remember, a quadrilateral is a four-sided figure. It's a little hard to write on here, so you'll have to bear with me while I get used to it. Okay, so the first type of quadrilateral that we're going to talk about is parallelograms. So first of all, it's called the parallelogram because both pairs of opposite sides are parallel. So that's what makes it a parallelogram. Oh boy. Uh-oh. Sorry, guys. Okay, there we go. So we're going to use this figure to the right to label some of the main parts of a parallelogram. First of all, the vertices are basically just the corners of the shape. So M, A, T, and H, those would be considered the vertices. Okay. The opposite sides are the sides that are, I hate to just say opposite each other, but I guess they're across from each other. So like MA and HT, those would be considered opposite sides. And there's segments, so we want capital letters with the bar on top. And then another pair of opposite sides would be MH and AT. Okay, so those are the opposite sides of the figure. Trying to erase this. Okay, well, those are just going to stay there. Okay, next, opposite angles. The opposite angles are the angles that are diagonal from each other. So like H and A, those would be considered opposite angles. So angle H and angle A. And then T and M would be considered opposite angles. Angle T and angle M. I don't know why I can't erase them. Oh, there we go. Okay, so that would be opposite sides, opposite angles. The next thing we're going to talk about is consecutive angles. So consecutive angles are the angles, if you remember when we learned about parallel lines, they're on the same side of the transversal and they're both on the inside. So like, for example, let me do a different color here. So like these two right here, those would be considered consecutive. Also, these two are consecutive. Also, these two are consecutive. And you guessed it, M and A are also consecutive. So they're on the same side of the figure. And they do have a special relationship that we're going to talk about in a little bit. Okay, so the consecutive angles here, there are 4 pairs of them. And so they, like I said, are A and T go together. Angle A and angle T. Angle H and angle T. Angle H and angle M. And then lastly, angle M and angle A. So those are all considered to be consecutive angles. Okay, the next thing is the diagonals. The diagonals are if you connected the opposite angles. So let me try to use one of these line tools. Oh, I don't want that. Okay, never mind. Okay, well, I'll just sketch a line. How about that? So like if I were to connect H and A like that, or M and T like that, those would be the diagonals of the figure. So if I were to name the diagonals, they would be MT and HA. Oops. Okay, so those are the diagonals of the figure. There is a symbol for a parallelogram. It's just kind of like a mini little parallelogram that looks like this. So you can use that in front of the 4 letters when you name it. So remember we talked about when you name a quadrilateral, you have to start at any of the corners. So you could start, say, here at M, and then go to A, then go to T, then go to H, and that would be parallelogram MATH. Or you can go the other way. It really doesn't matter what you do as long as you don't go out of order. So I can go to the right clockwise, or I can go counterclockwise around like that. You wouldn't want to do something like go from M to H, then to A, then to T. You can't do that. So for naming down here, we'll say here are some examples. We said M, A, T, H, or parallelogram M, H, T, A. Let's add in a little note. Must go around the figure. Like you can't jump around. Okay, so that is the first part. Those are all the basic parts of a parallelogram. So then we talked about some properties of parallelograms, and these are the properties that we're actually going to use to solve the problems. So we have a few theorems that we're going to talk about. The first one is that the opposite sides of a parallelogram are congruent. Remember that the opposite sides are always the same. Oops, that does not look like an N. Okay, opposite angles are also congruent, so they're the same measure. Consecutive angles. So consecutive angles are the ones that they come like right after another. They're on the same side of the figure. Consecutive angles are not congruent, but they are supplementary. So I don't know if you guys remember what supplementary means. Hopefully you're all saying that it means that it adds to 180. If you didn't know that, you might want to add that in. Okay, so I can't leave that there. The heck? Okay, no degree symbol. All right, so lastly, the diagonals of a parallelogram, we say they bisect each other. And if you remember what bisect means, it means they cut in half. They cut each other in half. That's what bisect means. Okay, so let's take a look down at this example. We have parallelogram MATH here. We're going to find all of the missing parts. So first, we're going to ask you to find X. So X is here. Oops. Keep forgetting. Okay, so X is here. Notice that X is labeled on HT, and HT is opposite of MA. So those are considered to be opposite sides, which means they're congruent. So MA and AT would be, HT rather, MA and HT would be the same. So therefore X is 15 centimeters. So I'm going to just mark these the same. I'm going to label this with 15 centimeters. And then over here, we're going to put that X is 15 centimeters because opposite sides are congruent. Hopefully, as I do this a little bit more, the writing will get a little bit neater. I apologize. I'll get used to it. Okay, next, Y. Y is angle A. Notice that Y and H, this 55-degree angle, those are considered to be opposite angles. So those are also the same. So Y would just be 55 degrees. And we would say because opposite angles are congruent. So those are equal. So this is 55. Okay, W. So W is here. So notice W is not opposite of 55 or the Y. Those are considered to be consecutive angles. So right here, let me use a different color. Right here, W and 55, those are consecutive. Also, M and A here, those are consecutive as well. So what we're going to do, since they add to 180, is we're going to do 180 minus 55, which would be 125. So this one is 125. And then if I asked you for it, this one's also 125 because the opposite angles are the same. Okay, so over here, we're going to say W is 125. And we're going to say because consecutive angles are supplementary. Sorry, I'm just trying to fix my E here. Okay, consecutive angles are supplementary. Okay, so we found all of the missing angles inside. This last question has to do with the diagonals. So just so I have some room inside the figure, I'm going to erase the stuff that I had there. That's my dog scraping at the door. Let me let her in. Okay, so the last part is we're going to draw in the diagonals and label the intersection point B. Whoa, that is not what I wanted. Forgot to change the thickness. Okay, here we go. So if we were to draw in the diagonals and label that intersection point B. So the question's asking which segments are congruent. So remember we talked about how the diagonals bisect each other. So they cut each other in half. So what that means is that this segment MB would be congruent to this segment BT. So that's one thing we can say. Is that MB is congruent to BT. Okay, and then HB would be congruent to BA. So those would be the same length. So we would say HB is congruent to BA. And we're going to say because diagonals bisect each other. Okay. So that bottom part you guys don't have. So that's the gist of parallelograms. The practice that you're going to do is going to be basically you're going to have a parallelogram given to you, and they might give you like one part of it and you have to find the other parts. So kind of similar to this section here. Some of them will just be numbers, and then some of them will be algebra. So maybe what I can do is I can do out one or two of the algebra problems for you, so you can have an idea of how to do the rest. So that's it for now. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm going to post a blank copy of this on Classroom. So if you have a printer, you can print it and fill it out. But most of you should already have this because this is the last thing we did on Thursday last week. All right. Well, let me know if you have questions. And that's it.